Yesterday, Senator Bernie Sanders had his largest 2020 rally in the Granite State with 7,532 people showing up at the University of New Hampshire. It's part of his final push to win that state, where based on recent polling, he is in the lead.
So, friend of the show, senior advisor to Bernie Sanders, Chuck Rocha, he's back to tell us more about the senator's New Hampshire chances and a lot more than that. Chuck, welcome.
Good to be here.
I understand you have a few updates for us.
A few updates, three quick things. First of all, thank all of you who've given $5, $10 to Bernie Sanders. This morning, our campaign manager, Faz, on CNN announced that we've hit 7 million individual donations. That's crazy. Wow. Thank you so much for all the grassroots support. I think the second thing is, if things go south tonight, I'm ready to be a waiter at your local steakhouse.
That's
Number three,
That's right.
I live 2 miles from here, and I fell asleep in my Uber on the way over. That's kind of sums up how I feel right now.
Good.
I don't know. It's not been a relaxing week for you.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Can we actually back up and start with Iowa? Because we still don't have a resolution there.
Right.
Your campaign asked them to do a partial recanvass. Just explain what is going on, what is the time frame, what have you asked for, what can people expect?
So we found some errors, and we're going back to get them to change them. But before you do that, you have to get them to recanvass those pieces of paper.
Right.
This don't really change anything. It gets super wonky, but to get them to look at that and to recanvass that allows you to go back and actually change some of those wrong math equations that some of the people who I don't think had ill will, but anybody who knows anything about me and math, like, we're all going to make mistakes, but they're saying they can't change the piece of paper if the person signed the bottom, legitimizing what the math was. So we want them to look at that. First takes a recanvass of those precincts where we found improprieties or differences.
Got it.
Gotcha.
So, Chuck, how are we thinking about the map right now? No secret, Bernie, it's great. New Hampshire is a great country for him. How are we thinking about Nevada and South Carolina? That's where all eyes are. I know you've invested heavily in the Latino community and the African-American community in South Carolina. How are you feeling about your chances there right now?
So there's a reason why I'm not in New Hampshire, other than I'm not going back to a state that cold ever again after living for 3 weeks in Iowa, where it's below zero, which is not good for humans.
Yeah.
Is I've been here for the last 4 or 5 days working on that strategy with the teams on the ground. So what people, and we've talked about it here, California got their ballots a week and a half ago.
Right.
Ballots in Colorado dropped yesterday. They started voting in Washington State via military and overseas ballots a few days ago. So we're building and building. We've taken a lot of our best staff in Iowa and we've redeployed them into some of the most important states beyond Super Tuesday. So you have to stay ahead of the ground game in all of these other places to actually have a chance to win. People talk about Super Tuesday and all the delegates. We're very much positioned to win a lot of those. You saw the TV buy that we have up, but we're looking even beyond that.
Yeah.
So we're looking at Georgia, we're looking at Arizona. We're moving this train along, but it's all about the infrastructure on the ground of these activists who are already there, who have self-organized, and now we're plopping down organizers to organize them and to get them doing barnstorms.
Right.
Which, correct me if I'm wrong, is a difference from 2016, where it was more like building the plane as it's taking off on the runway, right? We did well here, let's run around to here. Tell me if I'm wrong about that. And I also want to know, we haven't had any public polling out in Nevada since early January. How are you all feeling there?
First of all, when you start talking about redeployment from the last campaign, my eyes started twitching a little bit for a reason. Because, man, we were trying to do everything the right ways, but we were moving lots of pieces really fast, raising lots of money all at one time, and we had lots of folks going lots of places. And we couldn't have done it without some amazing people who did great work, but it's much more organized this time.
Sure.
Yeah.
It was much more structured. Like, I was on an airplane to New Hampshire, out of Iowa, sitting down with the senior team. We had already evaluated all of our staff. We knew exactly who we were going to move. We were set up, we were positioned. I think that's the real difference, is before we never had built out an infrastructure to take advantage of that grassroots groups of people that just needed a little help on the ground. Well, we knew that now, so we built that out.
Gotcha.
To your point about Nevada, it's going to be interesting. I'll remind everybody at home, we're talking about a caucus again, but the good news is we're not planning on using an app to count numbers, A. But B, it's going to be a turnout. But a few things about Nevada that make it different, I think, is a great advantage for us. Of course, one is the Latino vote. And we've done amazing work working there on the ground for over 8 months. I'm not going to give you much more details than that today, but next week I will. But they have early vote there. So they've built in, instead of having satellite caucuses, you can start voting 4 or 5 days before the actual caucus where you go in, kind of like a regular early vote, Crystal, that we're used to, where you can vote and walk out.
But how does that work on the second alignment? What if your vote...
You give your first and second choice in case your first person is not aligned. So you kind of give a ranking of a vote called vote.
Ranked choice voting. Yeah, that's interesting. How are you feeling about these billionaires, though? Tom Steyer has put oceans of money into Nevada, oceans into South Carolina. Bloomberg actually won the Dixville Notch thing in New Hampshire, even though he's not even on the ballot. I mean, how are you thinking about this internally? This is, I mean, a real chink in a possible delegate, in the delegate math for your path to the nomination.
I think that it's going to be a challenge with anybody with that much money. I think we're really going to be more reliant on our grassroots support than we ever have before. But I remember an old political saying that an old political operative out of the South used to say, his name was Mudcat, and he said, if you lie long enough about having a horse, eventually somebody will buy you a saddle. And that's what Bloomberg is hoping to do.
Yes.
I heard you reporting earlier about some of the things he said about African Americans and the black community, the stop and frisk, right? Like he's getting away with that right now because he's just out there running ads talking about how great he is. But at some point, he's hoping that the American people will buy him a horse because he's talking about how great a saddle he's going to have, right? Yeah. So like this is going to come home to roost, but only if you have enough people out there or money. You have to have money or people who can take on that message and go, here's the facts. Here's the longevity of Senator Bernie Sanders' records of standing up for civil rights, who's empowering people of color. So, I mean, he can get away with that because he's riding by himself right now.
Yeah.
Where does the challenge come from? How do you take that challenge on?
Yeah.
Right. We're seeing early reports also that because he has bought so many political operatives across this country, that it is affecting a lot of candidates. I'm not just talking about presidential candidates, but down ballot candidates as well. Is that something that's affecting even your campaign?
I've heard it in every state that we've been in, and I can talk from personal experience about one particular staffer in South Carolina who we heard from who was like, hey, Chuck, I'm with Bernie. I'm going to vote for Bernie, but I'm going to go get this money because he's going to double my salary and pay me till November, and I need to pay my bills when this thing is over. And I was like, look, brother, go do what you have to do. I respect. We still like your vote, and ask your mom and dad if they'll vote for Bernie as well. And he goes, oh, no problem. Like, that's a real thing.
You can't compete.
But if he's doing it with a presidential campaign, because I've had black staff on the ground in South Carolina for 8 months.
Right.
We have 80% of our staff down there are from South Carolina. We've hired the best of the best. We've doubled and tripled and very intentionally organized in the South, in communities of color. And for him to come rolling into town with his checkbook, first, I mean, it's smart. He's going to hire somebody who's done all the work already and be like, you're making $50,000 a year? I'll pay you $100.
Right. And pay you all till November.
Right. And knows what you all are doing there, too, by the way.
Absolutely. Like,
That's
it's horrible.
And look, you're the Democratic frontrunner campaign. What do you, if you're like a novice primary candidate? You can't hire anybody. There's no competition.
Think about if you're in Texas and you're running for state rep and you just need to hire a few good folks to help get out the vote, right? Like, that's where it hurts the most. I mean, we lost a good employee in South Carolina. We have lots of people who want to work for us. I've got a stack of resumes.
You're going to be fine.
Yeah. But it's not us, right? It's those small campaigns, sheriff's campaigns, state reps, county commission.
Yes.
Every county commissioner in Texas is up, and there's lots of them. All that power in the county structure of Texas, you know this.
Yeah, great point.
Is in the county commission, right? So, like, who's working on those races?
Yeah.
Well, and also for the other candidates who are in the race, as their teams are looking at the path and saying, maybe you're Elizabeth Warren and things are looking a little shaky. Pete Buttigieg doesn't have the support in the African American community to go the distance. How hard are they going to push their candidates to go after Bloomberg when they know that may be their meal ticket after their campaign drops out?
I hear it in state after state. I've been doing this work for 31 years, so I've got long tentacles into the political operative world and folks on the ground. And back to Texas, I got a call last week, trying to warn me that there's $5 million worth of ground money that's been put into the ground game in Texas in the Latino community, right, to get out the vote. And he's hired a bunch of operatives to do that piece. Now, how effective that will be, and can you just throw money at a problem? I think that you're seeing a certain bump that you're going to see when you infuse money into the system, his rise with African-American votes, because nobody's challenged him on what he's saying. But it does have an effect. Yeah. We don't know, because we've never seen this before, how much of an effect
it's the most natural experiment for how much money can buy you. I mean, yeah, he's got a message and all that, but it's as close as we're going to get, and it's really troubling.
All right, New Hampshire tonight. Yeah. Must win.
I think
gonna win.
We're going to win. And I think that it's pathetic to watch people on TV talk about my senator or my candidate when they're like, how much is a win? Like, we have invested lots of money. Let me give you one quick anecdote. Yeah. This weekend on Saturday, my phone rang at 10 a.m. and it was the field director in New Hampshire who was freaking out. He's like, Chuck, we have so many volunteers over the last 4 days. We're going to run out of literature before Election Day. Can you get me more literature? Back to what the job Chuck's got. I got to fix problems, right? So I literally had to get a local union shop to open up on Sunday in New England and print me 100,000 new pieces of lit to get there by 2 o'clock on Monday so we'd have all the lit we needed today. We got it there. I fixed the problem. But if you want to know about why we're going to win, that's why we're going to win.
That's the nitty-gritty of the campaign.
That's why we're going to win.
A win is a win. Forget about all this. Oh, it's not enough, et cetera, et cetera. Win is a win.
But pay attention to Nevada. I've got some tricks in my little bag of tricks that you haven't seen yet.
We're going to check back in with you on that one next week.
Thank you, Chuck.
Thank you, Chuck. Coming up, friend of the show, New Hampshire journalist Paul Steinhauser is back home after the Iowa caucuses. I'm sure he's very happy to be there. His update from New Hampshire, that is next.